When Sarah saw 200 cats in her backyard, she frantically called 911 in terror. But 24 hours later, she discovered she owed her life to those same cats. What happened in this small town became the greatest proof of cats' true intelligence ever. Recorded. It started like any other Tuesday morning in the quiet town of Millbrook, Pennsylvania. Sarah Chen, a 34-year-old nurse, was getting ready for her early shift at the local hospital when she heard an unusual sound coming from her backyard. Not the typical chirping of birds or the distant hum of traffic, but something else entirely. A low collective rumbling that seemed to vibrate through the walls of her house. When Sarah pulled back her kitchen curtains, her coffee mug slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. Her entire backyard, a modest quarter-acre lot that she had meticulously maintained for years, was completely covered with cats. Not just a few strays looking for food, but hundreds of them. They sat perfectly still, all facing the same direction, as if waiting for some invisible command. "This is insane," Sarah whispered to herself, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. The 911 operator initially thought it was a prank call. "Ma'am, did you say 200 cats?" "Maybe more," Sarah replied, her voice cracking. "They're everywhere. In my yard, on my roof, on my neighbor's fence. They're not moving, they're not fighting, they're just sitting there." Within hours, the phenomenon, what had spread throughout Millbrook. Emma Rodriguez, who lived 3 blocks away, discovered her front porch occupied by at least 50 cats. The elderly Mrs. Patterson found her garden shed surrounded by dozens more. The local grocery store owner, Mike Sullivan, couldn't open his business because the parking lot was filled with what looked like an organized feline assembly. The town's small police force was overwhelmed. Officer Janet Williams had been on the force for 15 years and had seen her share of unusual situations, but nothing like this. "In my entire career, I've never seen animals behave this way," she told the local news crew that had rushed to cover the story. "They're not aggressive, they're not scared, they're just organized." By noon, the cat count had reached an estimated 3,000. They had appeared from nowhere, as if summoned by some silent call that only they could hear. The most unsettling part wasn't their numbers, it was their behavior. These weren't random stray cats acting on instinct, they moved with purpose, positioning themselves at specific locations throughout the town with military-like precision. The residents of Millbrook were terrified. Children couldn't go to school, businesses remained closed, and the elderly were afraid to leave their homes. The cats weren't attacking anyone, but their sheer presence was overwhelming. Every street corner, every parking lot, every front yard had become a staging ground for what looked like a feline occupation. Local authorities called in animal control from neighboring counties, but even they were baffled. "In 30 years of animal control work, I've never seen anything like this," said Director Robert Hayes. "These cats are displaying coordinated behavior that we typically only see in pack animals like wolves or dolphins. It's unprecedented." Social media exploded with videos and photos of the cat invasion. #MillbrookCats began trending worldwide, with everyone from animal behaviorists to conspiracy theorists offering explanations. Some suggested it was a result of environmental changes, others claimed it was supernatural, and a few even proposed that the cats were responding to some kind of underground seismic activity. Dr. Amanda Foster, a renowned animal behaviorist from Cornell University, arrived in Millbrook on Wednesday evening. She had studied unusual animal behavior for over 20 years. But the videos and reports from Millbrook had captured her attention like nothing before. "What we're seeing here defies conventional understanding of feline behavior," Dr. Foster to explain to the gathered crowd of residents and reporters. "Cats are typically solitary creatures, especially when it comes to territorial disputes. The fact that thousands of them are coexisting peacefully in such a confined space suggests they're responding to a stimulus that we haven't identified yet." Dr. Foster began her investigation by mapping the cats' positions throughout the town. What she discovered was even more remarkable than the invasion itself. The cats weren't randomly scattered, they were forming a specific pattern, concentrating their numbers in certain areas while completely avoiding others. The breakthrough came when Dr. Foster noticed something that everyone else had missed. The cats weren't just sitting randomly, they were all facing the same direction. More specifically, they were all facing the basement of the old Miller Hardware, to a store, a building that had been abandoned for over a decade. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Foster muttered as she studied her maps and observations. "They're not just gathered here randomly, they're focusing on something specific." With the help of local authorities, Dr. Foster gained access to the abandoned Hardware store. What she found in the basement would change everything. The basement of the Miller Hardware store was infested with rats, not just a few rats, but thousands upon thousands of them. The infestation was so severe that the floor was barely visible beneath the writhing mass of rodents. But these weren't ordinary rats, they were carrying a deadly disease. Dr. Foster immediately contacted the Centers for Disease Control. Laboratory tests confirmed her worst fears. The rats were infected with a new strain of hantavirus, a potentially fatal disease that could spread to humans through airborne particles from rodent droppings and urine. If these rats had dispersed throughout the town, we could have been looking at a major public health crisis, Dr. Foster explained to the stunned town officials. The virus could have contaminated food supplies, water sources, and living spaces. We're talking about a potential epidemic. The cats hadn't come to invade Millbrook, they had come to save it, somehow, through senses far superior to human capabilities. They had detected the massive rat infestation and the danger it posed to the community. Their invasion was actually a coordinated effort to contain the threat. Cats can detect pheromones and sense that we can't even imagine. Dr. Foster explained to the amazed residents. They sensed the danger posed by the infected rats and organized themselves to prevent the infestation from spreading. They were literally forming a living barrier around the contaminated area. The cats' positioning made perfect sense now. They had surrounded the hardware store and positioned themselves at every potential exit route the rats might use to escape into the town. They weren't just sitting there, they were hunting, catching and eliminating any rats that tried to flee the basement. Working with the CDC and local authorities, a massive cleanup operation began. The basement was sealed and fumigated, while environmental specialists worked to eliminate the rat infestation safely. Throughout the entire process, the cats remained at their posts, as if understanding that their mission wasn't complete. Sarah Chen, who had made that first terrified 911 call, watched the cleanup operation from her backyard, surrounded by the same cats that had frightened her just days before. "I thought they were here to threaten us," she said, tears streaming down her face, "but they were here to protect us." As the days passed, more details emerged about the cats' remarkable behavior. Security cameras from around town showed that the cats had arrived in small groups over several nights, each group taking specific positions as if following a predetermined plan. They had organized themselves into shifts, with some cats hunting, while others rested, ensuring continuous surveillance of the threat. What we witnessed in Millbrook represents one of the most sophisticated examples of animal intelligence and cooperation ever documented, Dr. Foster wrote in her preliminary report. These cats demonstrated planning, coordination, and altruistic behavior that challenges our understanding of feline cognition. Once the rat infestation was completely eliminated and the area was declared safe, something remarkable happened. The cats began to leave, not all at once, but in the same organized manner in which they had arrived. Small groups departed each night, disappearing back into the surrounding countryside from which they had come. Within a week, Millbrook was back to normal, but the town had been forever changed. The residents who had initially feared the cats now regarded them as heroes. A memorial was erected in the town square, honoring the guardian cats of Millbrook who would save their community from an invisible threat. Dr. Foster's research on the Millbrook cats became groundbreaking in the field of animal behavior. Findings suggested that cats possessed far more sophisticated social intelligence than previously believed, capable of not only detecting threats imperceptible to humans but also organizing collective responses to protect entire communities. The cats of Millbrook showed us that the natural world is far more interconnected and intelligent than we ever imagined, Dr. Foster concluded in her final report. They demonstrated that animals can be not just our companions, but our guardians, protecting us from dangers we don't even know exist. Today, Millbrook is known as the town that was saved by cats. The story has inspired research into animal early warning systems and has changed how scientists think about the relationship between humans and their animal neighbors. The town has even established a cat sanctuary, ensuring that any feline visitors are welcomed and cared for. Sarah Chen, now a vocal advocate for animal welfare, often tells visitors about that terrifying Tuesday morning when she thought her town was under siege. "I learned that sometimes what looks like a threat is actually a blessing," she says. "Those cats didn't come to harm us, they came to save us. And they did it without expecting anything in return." The cats of Millbrook proved that intelligence comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most profound acts of heroism come from the most unexpected sources. In a world where humans often see themselves as separate from nature, these remarkable felines showed us that we are all part of the same interconnected web of life, and that sometimes our greatest protectors come on for pause. As the sun sets over Millbrook, residents still keep an eye out for cats in their neighborhoods, not with fear, but with gratitude, because they know that somewhere out there, these silent guardians are still watching, still protecting, still proving that love and intelligence can come in the most surprising packages. The invasion of Millbrook wasn't an invasion at all. It was a rescue mission. And sometimes, the heroes we need are the ones we least expect.